Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the One of Us podcast. We are so excited that you're here with us today. Today we have a very special interviewee. It's the man himself, Juan, one of the co-hosts of the One of Us podcast. And today we're going to be asking him questions, digging deep into his life, his testimony, his story, and hopefully it impacts one of you all, as I'm sure it will. Juan, how are you feeling about this today, about being interviewed?
I'm excited. I dressed up, as you can tell. I wore my Sunday's best for you guys, but I can't tell the same about you. So, you guys try better.
Dang. Yeah, for those of you just listening, Juan's wearing a tie. He's wearing a dress shirt. He said, I came prepared. I'm getting interviewed today. The rest of us slacking a little bit, but it's okay.
I'm just kidding, guys. I'm just trying to be silly. But I did dress up for you, my friends, and my wife.
Thanks. We appreciate it. So Juan, tell us a little bit about your story, I guess, for the interviews to hear. Kind of how you grew up and your story, your journey, I guess, pre-faith. Because I think it's a good testimony, good story.
Sheesh. Pre faith? Man, I don't know. I try to block off my BC days as much as I can think, but um, I guess it's a part of every great testimony. So, for me, I grew up in like a Catholic household, and my parents were not necessarily practicing Catholics, more culturally Catholic in the Hispanic sense. And growing up, that had a little bit of influence on me, but since we didn't really, practice it as much, it wasn't God wasn't in the forefront of my mind. So I kind of developed this logical atheist view in life where you know, I felt like God was more as of a genie to other people than it was like a real being. And then, fast forward a couple of years down the line, I'm just living your typical American teenage life. And uh, me and my best friend Arturo, we meet our very first Christian. I won't say her name for purposes, but she was the very first Christian we ever met, and we were just so confused, not in a judgmental way, but more so in a way that she wasn't participating in the same things that we were doing, and we just didn't understand. So it would be telling her, why aren't you smoking with us? Why aren't you, partaking in the drunkenness? Why aren't you, you know, I don't know, gossiping with us? And she'd always kind of push back on us with this narrative that she believes in God and his teachings. And that kind of just opened up a door for me and my best friend. And um, I was always invited to church, but I was kind of your typical I have something to do, I made up every excuse under the book. But after a while I eventually started going, and the Lord changed me. But that was kind of like my BC days before knowing God.
So I was wondering, do you feel that your background in cultural Catholicism, in quotes, was a hindrance to you actually coming to the saving knowledge of Jesus, or did it help you?
I don't think it helped me. I just think that having that basis exposed me to, this is what I tell to a lot of people, is I knew of God, but I didn't know God.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I would say it was more of a hindrance because I felt like I did know God. And so, growing up, when people would say, "Do you know Jesus?" I felt like I did. Yeah, he's that person who died for our sins. I don't know what significance that means, or what does that mean for my life. So I would say no, honestly. It wasn't really good for me. So, kudos to the Lord. His saving grace redeemed me and my circumstance.
In the end of your story, you were sharing how you always came up with excuses when this friend would invite you. What was it that caused you to come up with excuses? Like, what was it that prevented you from being, telling her, hey, you know what, I'll check it out? Like, what was it that was so, no, I don't want that? Like, what changed?
I think it's like a transitional process, honestly. In the beginning, I felt that my limited understanding of God uh, made me feel like, religion is kind of like a farce or a facade. So there's no real need for me to jump full face into whatever I'm being invited to. So I would just say no. I'd say, I have quote unquote better things to do, right? You know, whether that's living in the world, getting drunk, doing drugs, just doing a lot of dumb things, I guess, from a standpoint that I see. And then eventually the invites started to be more so like, hey, my Christian friend and my best friend, right, at the time, Arturo, or well, still now Arturo, he'd tell me, like, hey, I hear what you're saying, what you're struggling with. Why don't you come to church and hear what the Lord has to say about it? Or hey, why don't you come to my youth group event where we get to have fun and just talk about deep topics. And then the invitations for me started sounding more like, oh, maybe there's something that I'm not getting. Maybe there's an answer that I'm looking for that could be there to the problems that I'm facing inside my heart. Growing up, I come to like a point of like I'm just trying to be very what's the word? Like open, not so closed off to the truth. Because for me, uh, I guess I grew up in like a STEM background. So I felt like up in that point, I've been told what to believe. And there's this really famous speech that happened in high school. I don't really know where it's exactly from, but it was talking about this notion of dogma in the sense that a lot of people, they say they believe in something, but they actually don't know why they believe in it. They don't know why they believe in certain concrete truths that they quote unquote have understanding in. So I was like, there's a lot of aspects of my life that I say that I know, but if I'm withholding some aspects of truth that could be found through faith in Christ, then I should try to explore that. So then eventually my curiosity was so piqued that I ended up going to a church in Reno. And the first two times were pretty tough. I think I experienced, it's like called the I don't know if it's called the ostracized effect or like um the group effect. It's basically where at church everyone knows what songs they're singing and they know what page to turn in their Bible, and they're sitting next to the people that they talk to. So I kind of felt like a fraud. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just here. But then as I slowly kept going, I felt like the Lord slowly created divine interventions for me to meet, the pastors, the youth leaders, for God to speak through them to my life for for the particular problems I was facing. So I guess to answer your question again, Vic, from the beginning, what really transformed my excuses to I'm like doing whatever, which were basically lies, to the point of, hey, I'm actually seeking the Lord now, was the persistent faith that my friends had in inviting me every day.
Yeah, I think that's really encouraging for people to hear that. They say it takes an average person, what is it, 7 times being asked to come to church for them to actually do it. There's some statistic like that. So it's encouraging to hear, like, be persistent, keep asking, because the life change when you have Jesus is worth any amount of rejection. That girl, your friend, experienced a lot of rejection. Your friend Arturo experienced a lot of rejection when they asked you over and over again to come, and you made so many excuses. So I just think that's a beautiful testimony. I was wondering, so you explained a little bit about what made you take that first step and actually showing up. What was it about that first time you went to church that made you want to come again? Because you could have said, okay, I did it, I tried it, it was a little weird, moving on.
Yeah, I would say the structure of church, it's hard. This is my personal experience, and I guess I can only speak from my testimony. My first interactions with a Protestant church was, I felt like, because I've been to mass a handful of times with my family, and if this might be a little bit of a hot topic in itself, I just felt that a mass and the 21st century American church follow a similar structure. Not to say that they're the same, but I'm talking about the continuity, the mundaneness of things. It's like, you know, I show up and, we stand up when the person's singing, then we sit down for announcements, then we stand up for another song, then we sit down for announcements and a sermon, then we stand up in response. But none of that really clicked in my mind. So in my head, I was like, I was wrestling with this feeling of, why are all these people around me? Why do they have so much life? Like I could see it with my eyes, like I feel like when I walked in there, I came in with the right heart of, what, I'm just going to be open to whatever's happening within these four walls. And, my humility in that, I think God met in showing me, like, maybe the first time I wasn't really understanding anything because I had a lot to learn, but I couldn't deny what I was seeing, which was people transformed and, truly filled with joy in the church. And, I feel kind of, I had, I hadn't been I hadn't been born again, I should say, or, you know, gave my life to Christ up until a handful of, further days attending the church, further interactions with people. The first couple times I'm like seeking, and honestly, you know, praise be to God for sending people who love so much and care so much for me, people that I hardly knew that poured into me, cared about, my walk with the Lord and my salvation. And it really took, there was this like urban plunge that was being hosted by the youth group. And I was in high school. I think I was like 16, and I didn't want to do it. I was like, man, this sounds lame. Like, what's the point of going to evangelize? Like, someone who's really passionate about Christ will probably do better. But my youth pastor at the time, he really, really pressed for me to go. He said, you know what, I'll pay for the whole thing. Don't worry about it. It's a transformational, journey. You'll learn so much about, you know, what fruit is there to gain by following Christ to the fullest in making disciples. So I ended up saying yes, and I spent this like 1 week in the Tenderloin, I think the area is called, in San Francisco. It's like the second most impoverished area in the United States. And it was just, I was kind of going in there thinking like I'm just going to be like this crusader, like saving people with like probably the most limited knowledge I had about Jesus, when I didn't even really believe that much in Jesus. I kind of had a, maybe he could be real, but who knows. And God just really kind of just brought me to rock bottom during that experience, to make me realize, God is the rock bottom. And what was so beautiful about that, I guess, urban plunge mission trip, however you want to phrase it, was, you know, we met so many, uh, I guess, like impoverished people, people who had no money, who were struggling with alcohol and drugs. And I felt like self righteous compared to them. Like, oh, I have, my clothes don't smell. I know where to go to the bathroom. But all those poor people, I kid you not, they knew so much more scripture, even now, than some people I speak in the church. Like there's this one guy, they called him Bobby. Like I'll never forget him. I kid you not, this guy, he was like that guy from the book of Eli. He just knew every single word in the Bible. Like every time I tried to share a scripture with him, he would say the whole thing in front of me. And he acknowledged his shortcomings, and but he had so much joy and he loved Christ so much. And I think it was in that experience, like alone, but many others, where I realized how poor I was. Here's someone who I think is like dirt poor, has nothing, and then I realized, like, wow, actually I think I'm the poor one. I'm the one who doesn't have the joy, the peace, the riches that these people have around me. And I just kept asking a lot of questions to my youth pastor, and even if my youth pastor or the youth leaders didn't really have an answer, they always guaranteed me the time to look at it with me, and they always followed up. So then we get back to Reno, and then they had this altar call, and I just felt the spirit of God like lead me to confess, and I confessed my, I confess that Jesus is Lord, that I'm a sinner, that I need his salvation. And ever since then, I've just been trying to be sanctified day by day.
That's awesome. I know from my experience, I feel like in the church, there's always more women than men, at least in our age group. I think, it's a big issue that I don't know if it's just a United States thing, but I want to ask, what advice do you give to men maybe seeking or early in their faith journey to be a godly man? Because I think a lot of people can walk the walk or talk the talk, but for those who want to walk the walk.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, I guess to address the first question, how I know there's some statistics out there that say that there's more women who are attending church. And honestly, I've had some experiences, me being a youth leader in Reno for a time, there was a moment where majority of the youth group was like young girls, and sometimes a young adult there's only like women there. And then some of the men who were there, you would wonder if they had ulterior motives of showing up. So I understand that situation that could be happening in the church. I guess my biggest prayer is, I think I just pray against, the working of the devil against the nuclear family. I think, the devil works hard to try to destroy the image of, just the home, right? Like a strong father who's sacrificial, who's unconditionally loving, who, is seeking the Lord and trying to lead his family towards Christ and provides through them by the Lord's provision. And, there's also problems that face the opposite, sex. But I guess focusing on men, something that try to tell a lot of men is that, you know, it's kind of like where it says in the Bible. I guess I'm just going to paraphrase, but, you know, just to focus on Christ and everything else will be added, just don't really, I try to tell men to not really focus on worldly passions, but to really surrender it to the Lord. And I feel like, the Lord is a good father, and he knows what's best for us. So we should just trust what's in his hand. And I think another situation could be some men, I guess younger men. I can't really, this is my generalization also, but I feel that sometimes they find it it's not a necessity, or they haven't been fully like shaken to the core to experience like, oh, God is my rock. So, with those individuals, all I can do is pray and just guide them to seek the Lord first.
You talk about worldly passions and you being a non believer and kind of wanting to live the life that you wanted to live and then coming into the faith. What were some things that you struggled to get rid of? Or maybe where were some areas that you were a little stubborn in where you're like, it's not that big a deal, no biggie. And then the Lord later on convicted you and was like, hey, that's of the flesh, it's got to go. But what were those for you, and like how hard and how long did it take for you to, surrender those to the Lord?
hmm Yeah, honestly, I have two great experiences, and I'll be vulnerable. I mean, I don't mind. I think those are great questions, Vic. I think the issue that you're pointing to is the issue of lordship, which is, and I think a lot of Christians, when they first accept Jesus as Lord and Savior, is what they struggle with, which is the idea of surrendering your whole life to Jesus, right? Like, I'm at a point right now where I believe that my life is not my own, right? I've been bought by the price of Jesus's blood, and I live for him. That's like where I am today. But it took many days of sanctification to get to where I was today. I'm like 26 now, and I feel like it's taken that entire decade for me to be in the place that I am now. But there was a lot of worldly passions that I had when I had said yes to Jesus. I still remember when I got saved. People said, you know, the the fight against, the evil one, the the fight, the good fight has just begun. It's only going to be tough now, because now the devil really knows who you stand with, And I guess two experiences. The first one is a little less, I guess, more lighthearted, but I would say was a big thing for me. Was I was saved at 16, but I actually didn't get baptized until I was like 18, 19. Um, and a lot of that had to do with pride and the sense of lordship. So I felt in my heart that I wanted to get baptized, like absolutely, because it's like the expression outwardly that I am following God. But for some reason, since my family was still like culturally Catholic, not, um, I guess, Protestant or saved as I am, I felt that being baptized again without them being there would hurt. And I understand the theology behind, the Lord saying like he came to divide, father against son, and daughter against mother, and wife against husband. Like I understand that theology where, it's our love for Christ should outweigh all other cares of the world. But being so young in the faith at that time, I gave in to my flesh and to my pride to wait for that moment. And it wasn't until after a lot of pouring in from my friends and my, I guess, spiritual family from church to, be pushed to act on my conviction to be baptized. So thankfully, I obeyed the Lord and was baptized in Lake Tahoe when I was like 19. And you guys were all there. And it was like a very emotional time because, my family wasn't, but I still love them, and I pray for them every day. And it was an amazing feeling. I just was very glad to obey God in that area. Another area I feel like a lot of other guys really struggle with, just being vulnerable. It could be, the lordship around like lust and giving into your fleshly desires. Even when I was saved, I was dating someone at the time, and the person that I had was dating, we were already engaging in, let's just say, for a lack of a better word, sussaroony things. And it is what it is. But we were, in my head, I was always conflicted because I had said yes to Jesus, and you know, how youth group is a lot. The youth pastors telling us not to give in to these fleshly desires that are corruption. So this person that I was pursuing, they also said they were Christian, but I had told them, like, hey, I love God. I don't feel right. I feel like wrong. I feel this isn't for me. This isn't honoring the Lord. I don't think we should be engaging in sexual, contact or disobeying God in that order. And unfortunately, that um, conversation was really, I guess, it caused a lot of friction in that relationship because the person I was dating interpreted that as I didn't like her, or that I liked someone else, or it finally led to the other person calling me too religious, or I loved God too much, which I thought was a compliment. But you know uh that relationship ended, and I think it was because we were unevenly yoked. I think that person had one foot in the world and one foot in Christ, and I was just all for the Lord. And that relationship ended, but hopefully that person has found the Lord, and they're pursuing Christ. But I would say that that whole process of trying to understand, like, you know giving away, or I guess holding every lustful thought captive and holding every lustful passion and urge captive, especially when I was very young, was extraordinarily difficult because there were so many layers of, I would say, attacks of the enemy. There's like, I'm dating this person that I had known before I got saved, and now they feel that I'm hurting them. Should I just do this for them? But is that really, loving them, or am I just choosing them over Christ? So you can already tell that the snowballing of like confliction is growing so big. And looking at back at it now, it looks so like rudimentary in the sense of like, hey, you should have just acted on your conviction to obey the Lord. But when you're in it, it's just so difficult. But I thank God that, I listened to his convictions and I didn't give in to that. And yeah.
So, two things. One, I remember the day that you got baptized. And we all were there. I remember after you got baptized, it went down. It was a really beautiful moment. But I remember when we went and had lunch afterwards, because our friend Hope, I remember her mom came and we spent, I think, that entire lunchtime just talking about God and just how proud we were of you and like your courage, sharing that, your parents weren't there and it was a hard and difficult decision, but ultimately it was one for the Lord and for, your walk and stuff. So that was cool. And then I have a follow up question. So, you were talking about how community and how your friends had really encouraged and pushed you. How do you feel how do you feel community has impacted you?
Yeah. So, it's kind of funny. So, me and Arturo, we got saved roughly around the same time. And we came into college with, I honestly want to say, like 20 other classmates from our high school that we had. And I think we speak to like none of them. Not as a bad thing, but I think it just, I think it just shows um, how dedicated we were in our walk once we were becoming, young men. I remember so vividly the very first days of college where Arturo and I were trying to figure out what club to be a part of. And like there was this club called InterVarsity on campus. It was like a Christian org that, hosted people from the community to talk about, different topics for young adults and kind of connect young adults to churches. And I just remember I was like, you know what, this is something I want to be a part of, and I just put my foot like full on gas. And I just had this raging, zealous fire for the Lord in college, and I just pursued it, and it's just so funny. Like sometimes I just I think about that story, with Joseph and Abraham, where Joseph's brothers sell him to slavery, right? And then at the end of Genesis, like Abraham sees Joseph, but not only sees Joseph, but sees his grandchildren. And he's kind of like saying, hey, God was so good not to just let me see you, but let me see my grandkids. I just feel like when I first told God, like, Lord, I just want a community for you, a community that you provide for me, that not only did God provide for that, but he provided so much more, like more than I had ever anticipated. And like I've made, friends for life. And, I don't know, I just feel that the Lord really pushed me towards a strong community. And everyone, and from you guys to people off the podcast, you know, always help me keep myself humble and accountable to myself and against sin. And honestly, that's the best thing I could ever ask for. So I feel very blessed in that.
That's
What is
awesome.
your favorite memory of just like, the time that we've known each other? There's been a lot of years, but there's been a lot of fun moments that we definitely have. So I'd love to see your favorite rats moment.
Dude, there's too many. Okay, for those of you who don't know, when we met Crystal, she would always call everyone a rat. So we just called each other rats. So that's kind of where our group name kind of came from. But honestly, Tati, there's like too many to remember. I think every weekend I just looked forward to so much because we all did something really funny or hung out. But I'm just trying to think, like, I think the ones that just stick out to me so much is when we always had planned a big event to go somewhere, whether it was going camping or going to Disney or like going to Victoria's house to celebrate her 21st birthday. Like it was just always so fun because we all planned together, and it wasn't like those planning where it's like so much stress and what do we do and we need to make sure everyone's happy and blah. It was literally like, hey, I love you, you love me. Let's go have an amazing time. And how can we pray for each other? And how can we be vulnerable in the mess? And I always felt seen, and I always felt like I saw others. So I think those were, my favorite moments. But I will say this is my absolute favorite moment right now that I can think of was so basically, I think we vaguely spoke about this in another episode, but they pranked our friend Arturo um, by putting like 1,000 cups in his room, the girls. And like Arturo wanted some retaliation, not in a bad sense, just like in a silly sense. He was like, oh, maybe we should prank the girls. So the crazy thing about our friend group was all the girls but one girl, her name's Hannah, all the girls, they were all out of town. So they all, when the winters or summers came, they were back in California or wherever they were from. And the guys, would just kind of chill in Reno. So we are like, hey, we have a key from Victoria. Why don't we go in and just trash their room? Right. And I just thought that whole experience was so funny because since we knew every girl so well, we knew exactly how to prank their rooms. Like Crystal hates jump scares, so we're putting like air horns. So when she opens the door, and we're putting like scary things under her bed and around her closet. And like Victoria, her room's really tiny, and sometimes she gets like problematic with cleaning. So we're like flipping her bed, and like her closet is like all jumbly. So we're like making it more jumbly and throwing things in the back. And then for Hope, she's like, she's not vegetarian anymore, but I think she was mainly ovo vegetarian for a while. So somehow, I think this is the same pranking time, but we put like streamers everywhere, like streamers, like she couldn't like move around. And then I'm pretty sure this was the same day, but it could be a different day. But we put these blueberry infused sausage links on her
I think
fan.
that was her birthday.
That was her birthday. Okay, so I
That
just
was a
remember.
different day, but that was a good one too.
I just remember we did something along the same lines of like putting meat and like putting streamers everywhere, just trashing the room. And then Tati's room, we just saran wrapped everything because we knew that Tati would be frustrated to open everything. And I'll get back to that later. That's not my favorite part, but we'll talk about that at the end. My favorite part was since it was winter, we had bought these like elf shorts, and we were just going to be in these elf shorts and like just be like shirtless and take a really funny photo in the balcony and like put it on the fridge when the girls got back. But Hannah was still there, so we didn't prank Hannah because obviously she was there. And shout out to Hannah for taking one for the boys and not ratting us out. But I just remember we had filled the entire living room with so many balloons, and she just kind of walks in on us like just questioning what the heck is she doing. And then we ordered pizza. So we told Hannah at this point she had already, we had confined her to a covenant to not rat us out. And we had told her like, please, please, for the love of God, answer the pizza guy, the Domino's guy, so we can get food because we're starving. So she said, fine, because we were embarrassed. We were like in these like elf shorts and like topless, basically. And
It was snowing too.
it was
You guys were
snowing. Yeah,
literally
it was
just
a hard
wearing
snow.
these elf shorts.
So then, so then um, our friend Eli, he goes to the bathroom, and the Domino's guys come, and we're like freaking out, like, oh, let's hide, let's hide. So we're like hiding because we don't want the Domino's guy to like call the cops on us or something weird. And like our friend Hannah opens the door to grab the pizza, and she's like trying to pay the guy with cash. And then our friend Eli just like walks in the living room like in his elf shorts. And like literally Hannah was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, and like slams the door. So that was really funny.
I never knew that part of the story.
The fact that Hannah slammed it, I can picture her doing it too.
Okay, can I go back to something you said earlier, Juan? I love you. You love me. We're a happy family. Isn't that a Barney song?
Yeah, I noticed it too, but I let it go.
I couldn't
'Cause
let
it
it
was a
go because
serious-
Juan said I love you me, and it just I had to. Sorry.
I was waiting for him to finish it, but okay. Well, hey, I have a question. So, if you know Juan,
Question.
Question. You know Juan doesn't like the attention on himself. He's a very, very humble fellow. But Juan, this is your time to shine. So, what are 3 things you like about yourself, and why do you like those 3 things about yourself?
That's an interesting question. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Um, Honestly, I don't even know. I like that I'm.
Juan!
I don't know. Okay, jeez. Okay, the only thing I can say
This
is
is
that
therapy right now.
I can only say this. I like that I'm pursuing the Lord. Praise Jesus about myself.
Persistent.
I like that I am trying to be a good husband to my wife,
Faithful.
and I like that I can count on my friends.
Reliable.
That has nothing to do with you. You said I can count on my friends.
My friends can count on me. You got a friend in me.
Okay, so faithful, persistent, and reliable. Okay, Juan, we really have to work on that.
I'm just a, I'm just a baby. I'm just a baby. with God.
Baby.
Juan, when you try to give him a gift, he's like, "Why did you do this?"
Don't give Juan a gift.
Well, there you go, Juan.
Wait, can I say your story? So, we met when Crystal and I moved here to Vegas when we got connected to the young adults. We have a friend named Dan, and it was really funny because he always talks about this story where one of his best friends gave one of his best friends a gift. It was like a fashion item. And he's like, yeah, it's like a necklace or like a bracelet, and it looks super cool. It has all these orbs. Not that it is any rock stuff. It's just like it looked cool. And he's like, oh my gosh, thank you, Dan. Like this looks so cool. Like you know what? I think this will look better on you. So he just like takes it off and puts it on him, and he's like, I got this for you. And then his best friend is like, yeah, I think it's better on you. Sorry. So that's another funny story on gifts.
It appalls me because Dan still wears it to this day, and every time I see it, I'm like, he tried to give that to someone, and that person just rejected him.
I will say, my favorite story of Juan is when we went to the escape room and we were doing the one where you had to cut the wires, and he grabs the walkie-talkie and tells the guy on the other line, "Tell my wife I love her," because the bomb was about to explode. That one was so funny.
The guy said
That
no.
was before he had a wife.
Did you guys hear him say no?
No,
We're doing this escape room. And we had to cut a wire and we couldn't do it. And I tell the guy to call my wife and tell her that I love her, and he said no. And then we died.
That's so funny. Not to backtrack, but I did want to ask if you had any advice, Juan, for people who may find themselves in the spot that you were in, where there was lack of family support for becoming a Christian, maybe lack of understanding, maybe even like animosity or anger around that. How would you encourage someone in that space to like still step out in faith and still do maybe the hard thing by the world standards in order to like be obedient to God? Because I know that was a process for you. I guess how would you encourage someone else?
Yeah, Crystal, honestly, that's a great question. Uh, it was probably one of the hardest things to tell my mom that I was Catholic because although she wasn't practicing it so much, it was a huge part of her identity. So it was really difficult. And, sometimes family, they know what to say to really get under your skin or kind of tear you down. And there was a lot of that happened and a lot of threats. But, you know, we're all sinners, and, that aspect of my family is under the bridge and they know where I stand. And, I forgive them, they forgive me, or, that's all good, what I'm saying. But that entire situation was so difficult because it felt like to follow Christ, the price was to lose the things that I thought were I thought were like you couldn't lose, like your family, the support of people you think that love you more than anything. So it was really hard because I felt when I was pursuing the Lord that I had to choose between my family, my old self, or God. But that I felt the Holy Spirit tell me, or I guess I felt the Spirit of the Lord upon me tell me, you're coming across this crossroad where you have to choose either yourself or the world or me, like, or God. And I just told myself, God has been faithful throughout the Bible, and I've heard so many testimonies of people being faithful to the Lord and the Lord showing up. So I'm going to do that today. So I did, and it was very difficult. Like, it wasn't easy. It put a lot of strenuous uh, tension between my family and I, but the Lord, really showed up, and a lot of those, like, I guess, that tension really eroded. And by the grace of God, today, God gives me so much divine appointment with my family to talk about Him. And, I just pray that, one day the saving grace falls upon my family. I guess the advice I would give to anyone in the same situation is to trust in God, because, something that I think a lot of Christians don't understand is when Jesus said, have faith in me, it wasn't like this blind faith. It's not like, have faith in me just because, you know, it'll it'll just magically happen for the good. Like, a lot of the time that God says to have faith, or Jesus says to have faith in him, is because look what he has already done. And I feel like God has left us, so many love letters throughout the Bible to express how much he cares for us and how faithful he's been to those who loves him, and he loves them back. So I just would encourage anyone in that situation to trust in God above all things, even yourself. And I can guarantee you without a shadow of a doubt that the Lord will show up in your situation. And don't give up praying for your family. I know animosity can grow easily, uh, because there's always like this expectation for your family to be like like Superman, Superwoman. They can't do wrong. They're supposed to be great parents. But something that really restored a lot of um, the foundation for my mom and I was the fact that I had to again humble myself and realize that my mom is nothing but a sinner, and she has hurt and she has problems, and all I can do is pray for her and be a good witness to her that what God has done in my life.
I think that's good. Something that I've been kind of thinking of recently that can add on to that is having a lot of grace for your parents, because this is the first time we're all living and we don't, no one, there's no like right or wrong way to do things. And we're all just trying to figure out life together. So I feel like having that
Mhm.
mindset also helps, being graceful towards your parents. Especially like look at
Yeah.
Yeah.
yourself and how you're living life. You're like, I'm learning. Do we all even know what we're doing? Because I don't feel like I do.
Yeah. And I will say, like, to your point, Tati, um, I think that's why a godly community is so strong, because I felt so alone in the situation that I was in, because I felt at the church at the time that I was in, a lot of the youth didn't have the same background that I did, and they couldn't really understand why I still cared about my family or anything like that. But when I came to college and I met like you, Tati, or some other friends who were kind of in the similar boat, I felt very encouraged that there's other brothers and sisters that are, have the same understanding that I do and the same prayers. And, I felt that there's hope for my family and that God is great.
And something to note as well in that area is it won't stay the same. Like, God will move in that space. Because for you, Juan, what, 6 years ago, the type of conversations, the relationship that you had with your family in regard to faith was like little to non-existent or hostile. And like today, like we've seen the fruit of that just in comparison. Today, like opportunities to pray together when we're with each other at every meal, opportunities to share about the Bible, like your mom even started like reading certain like Bible stories and different things and asking questions and things like that. So alongside just trusting the Lord and having faith, just know that God can move in that space. No matter how rigid you think the situation is or how unchanging you think it is, you know, where there's a will, there's a way, and nothing is impossible to God. So I just want to encourage people in that as well. So now that you are here, you know, you're past kind of that season, that early season in your life, what do you feel like is the calling on your life from the Lord, or I guess the mission you have in this season, Juan?
Yeah, I feel like every day I'm getting sanctified to be more in the image of Christ. Um, I think, I feel I still feel like a newlywed, even though I'm coming up on 2 years with Crystal. So I felt like, you know, I never had a Christian relationship to kind of base myself off of, except for like, some pastors from church. So in this season, I had really surrendered myself to being an obedient husband to my wife, to kind of build a strong foundation for this family I created with such a significant person in my life. So a lot of my quote unquote calling in life has been just being a great godly husband. But now that I feel like we've built this foundation, I feel like the Lord's been leading me and my family to pursue Him more in our day to day. Like right now, I'm a nurse, and my wife, she's a social worker, and we love what we do, and we help people with great effect, and we, have a great witness for Him in our workspaces. But we just feel the Lord tugging us to do more work for His kingdom. So something that Chris and I talk about, that I guess it's a dream, an aspiration, something, an ambition that the Lord placed on our hearts, is just to serve Him in a big way through His church, through His the American church, and through also the serving of international communities. So I guess something that if you ever want to talk to Crystal Rai about the Discord, is just the passion that we have about the first century church, how it looked like, everything that the church had provided, how people responded in the church, and something that we feel kind of called or drawn to is just try to build a model for the church, or try to serve God's people through kind of restoring some of that in our society, and also serving the marginalized populations in the world, people who are sex trafficked slash refugees, just serving in that capacity. So if anyone's listening out there and wants to pray for our family, that would be much appreciated. So please and thank you, and I love you.
All right. For our last question of the evening, Juan, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you hope to get from this podcast, and what do you hope to give through this podcast?
Honestly, through this podcast journey, I just hope to gain a better understanding of my best friends who are on the podcast. Just know what the Lord's leading in them, how to pray for them, what you guys are doing, just seeing you guys grow in that area. I think that's all I really would hope for. And then that's what I hope to get. And what I hope that this podcast becomes, or what I give, is I told myself, me and Tati a long time ago, like I would say even after we graduated, like in 2020, we had talked about a podcast because we felt that our fellowship was so unique that not so many people, or not so many fellow brothers and sisters in faith, had experienced what we had. And even after, I feel like a lot of times people always told me that all the friends that you make was pointless, because at some point you'll maybe have one or two very close friends, or just one, or you'll have no close friends, you'll just have family, or sometimes you'll have nothing and just your spouse, or you'll have like nothing at all. And I understand, I came here with nothing and I'll leave with nothing, shout out to Job. But my prayer is that people would hear our testimony of great fellowship and have hope and faith that they can cultivate the same thing wherever they at, either with us or with other people. That God works in mysterious and miraculous ways, and that he desires us in fellowship and desires us not to forsake our congregation, our meeting. Because, the church moves in fantastic ways. And, you know, I guess long term hope is that either people who are listening here or others, they just come together to do something great for the Lord.
Hey, I want to thank you for one, just sharing and opening up. As much as you were sharing about your personal life, you were also sharing a lot of wisdom. And I know it's, hard being that there are 3 women here. So you're definitely holding it down for the men. So I hope there's more men that can listen and, really be encouraged by what you're saying. And I hope they're able to relate to you and, take your testimony and know that they're not alone, that there's someone else out there that has gone through and is going through the things that you're going through, and that God has such a purpose for them. So thank you, Juan, for sharing. And before we officially, oh, actually, Juan, do you have any closing last remarks that you would like to share with anyone? Any words of wisdom, any advice? Can you tell us one thing that you're like, someone told this to me, I got to share it with other people?
Okay. Jesus is real. Put your faith in him. And hallelujah.
All right. Amen. Short and simple. To the point. Let's go. We like it. Well, he said it, guys. That's it. Nothing else. All right. Well, before we officially end our little podcast, we like to do our hot takes. So, Tati.
I would rather live on a private island than a penthouse in my dream city.
Yeah.
I feel like a private island is so isolating, though.
Can the island be anywhere?
It's a private island, so only you, I feel, would have access to it. Well, I mean, obviously, if you invite people, but
Here's the thing, though. On your private island, I could make homes for all of you guys. So, would
but
I
then
really
how
be
would you
alone?
spread the gospel?
No. But if I have a private island, Tati, that means I got enough in the bank to have my little yacht, and I go into the city or into the mainland or wherever I'm at, do my stuff, come back, fly my private jet around the globe.
I think this is assuming you don't have money. I wouldn't make the assumption that you
Also, what the worldly materialistic idealism is this?
Juan, I'm saying using these resources to get off of your private island, and so you could share the gospel with other people. Or what you do.
Okay, but let's narrow it down. You only have a private
that's the
island.
only thing you
There's
have.
nothing else.
I get a
Let's
really
say someone
cheap
gave it to
little boat, a rowboat, and I go to the
Crystal gets an inflatable from Walmart.
I get the inflatable from Walmart. I go and
Where
create
would you
camps.
Where would you get Walmart? It's a literally private island in the middle of nowhere.
Tati, you act like I'm not going to be going off the island every other.
Okay, time out.
First of all, Crystal has seen Survivor. She can
Tati,
make a raft.
I can survive. Okay. Anyways,
okay, time out. I have to defend Crystal in this point. I think you guys are saying, would you rather be stranded on an island or have a dream penthouse? So we need to up the private island aspect a little bit.
Okay, the private island. So it's you either have a private island or you have the penthouse. But
is this like your dream private island, like anything and everything you want
money.
there?
Let's just say someone was like super close to you. Let's say
They give you the
I was secretly a millionaire and I passed away, and in my will I said I'm giving you either one or the other. Which one do you
I would
want?
continue to work remotely as a social worker. I'd get money. I'd make my private island into like a camp for kids and share the gospel there. Maybe open like a little worship area, maybe like a couples retreat, family retreat. It would be great. We'd have all the excursions, the water, the jungle, whatever. It'd be great. That's how I spread the gospel.
I just have to interject here. Vic, based off your explanation of you just have these two items, like let's say just today, I would have to sell both of them or one of them. Because I can't afford like the utility in a penthouse in my dream city.
Let's say all the utilities and stuff are taken care of.
Yeah, you do. If you want like plumbing and electricity, that's like so much money.
Okay, we're living in a fantasy world that doesn't exist.
Oh
Juan is too
my
logical for this, guys.
gosh.
Juan, are there no sleeves on that shirt?
Okay, guys, I'll admit this isn't a dress shirt. This was all a facade. I was gonna bring my clip-on tie, but I had some respect for you guys, so I tied a tie.
To answer your question, I'm just trying to avoid living in the penthouse in the city at all costs. So even if you said live in the dumpster versus live in the penthouse suite in the city, I would choose the dumpster. So moving on.
Why? I feel like I would
No.
want to live in the penthouse. As cool and amazing as the island would be, I feel like I'd get a little lonely.
Vic, if you had a private island, Vic, you know I would be there every day.
I know, but see, if there's a penthouse, that probably means like in walking distance, I can like go to different places. Crystal, first of all, there's no tropical smoothie on your private island. There's no Barnes and Noble.
Vic, we'll start our own community.
With what money?
Just the money we have normally.
We sell the private island and just get a smaller private island.
Okay, down.
This was definitely a huge hot take.
All
Okay,
right, next one.
What's the next one?
last one. Baths are better than showers.
Victoria would say yes. I would say,
No, shafts.
what does that mean?
A shower bath is the best.
Oh, that's what I do. I sit in the bath with the shower head on.
A shaft?
A
That sounds
shower
too
and
close
a
to a
bath.
curse word.
Vic, I don't like that.
I
Can we
don't-
do it the opposite way? Can we do
A bower?
bower?
A bower with an A. B-A-W-E-R. A bower.
A bower.
Bower.
Okay, wait,
No.
time out. Are you showering then bathing? Because that defeats the purpose.
No, I'm sitting.
You should shower then bathe.
I'm
I mean,
sitting
shower.
in
No,
the
bathe
bath.
then
Bathe
shower.
and shower.
I'm doing
Vic,
it
you
at
look
the
like
same
you.
time.
Vic, no, Vic, you look like you shower then bathe.
Isn't that good?
That's a
No,
compliment.
why would you lay in your filth after you shower?
Wouldn't
If
she
you're
already be
showered, there
clean?
is no filth.
Because she already cleaned herself.
Juan, you.
Do you guys floss before you brush your teeth?
No.
Sometimes.
Do you wipe before you poop?
Shut.
Exactly, that's how you guys sound.
No.
Tati, why are you dying over there?
That was very unexpected. Those are very different things.
They're the same thing. It's like you're doing something and then you're doing something dirty.
Would you
It makes no
get a
sense.
car wash knowing that it's gonna rain?
Yeah.
No.
Because you get
Vic,
waxed.
are you okay?
Because if you get the premium option, they're going to put wax over the top so it seals it and protects your paint.
Vic,
Vic,
you
we're
sound
not
like you
bougie
pay
enough
for
that.
Vic.
It's
Vic-
$20, Crystal. You can
Time out,
afford
time
it.
out, time out, time out.
Vic, you act like you
sound
do
like
anything with your car. You act
I,
like
ta- I take it to a place called my dad's house.
yeah.
Vic, you sound like you pay for premium air on your tires.
I only pay $20.99.
Wow.
Wait, is this a car wash?
No, actually, there is a place that you can go get a car wash and all this good stuff for like $12, and it's really legit.
Legitness.
Okay,
No,
Vic,
it's
I
legit.
have to say your idea of a bower only works if you bathe, then you have the energy to stand up and shower.
No, because what I do is I shower first, clean off, and then I put the bath plug in and just soak there and let the water hit me.
This is too far for me.
Okay, I won't say that is like a power play. You know, just laying and letting the water hit you on the ground.
That's
pretty...
like my therapy
I've done that
every
before.
week.
Yeah, because you can't take a bath and then get up and shower because your all energy is gone.
No.
I do that
no.
sometimes,
You have
actually.
to stand up.
Okay, guys. Well, you heard it here. We have officially come to the end of our podcast. We have finished interviewing me. We finished interviewing Tati and Juan. The only person that we have left is Crystal. So, guys, make sure you stay tuned so we can learn more about her. And I just want to thank you guys for listening to our podcast today. We love you. We appreciate you. Please subscribe. And if you have made it to the end of this podcast, I need to know. Do you prefer a bower or a shaft?
Ew.
Which word? Which
All
one?
I think about is Bowser.
So
Peach.
shaft.
You're so cool.
So whichever one you prefer to use more, which term you like more, let us know in the comments below. Subscribe. Again, I hope you guys were encouraged by this. Juan, again, thank you so much for sharing more about yourself and opening up and getting deep and just, sharing all the wisdom that you've learned over the years. Anyway, guys, we're gonna tap out for the night. Love you, subscribe, and we will see you guys next week.
See you
Have
next week.
an amazing weekend, an amazing week.
Bye.